Another neat thing you can do with My Maps from Google is you can use Google Forms or any spreadsheet with data to upload plottable points onto your map. And so here's an example of how you might use this. I've got a Google form I've set up with a few questions. The most important question is this one, which is where do you live? And we need a city and state answer. So it's a little tricky because we're depending on the user to type in their answer correctly with the correct spelling for the city name and state. But as long as they do that, then everything's fine. Below that, I've got a couple questions. Who did you vote for? And we got a couple choices here. Haley Brinton and Donovan Gump. And we also are asking which they prefer, ice cream or cake. And then finally, we'll ask them how old they are. And that's just a sample of types of questions that we can plot on the map and link it to their location, okay? So when someone would fill this out, we get a spreadsheet of results. This is what Google Maps is going to look at. And so it can pull the city and state information and all the information from these columns as well. So you could type this in manually, but using a form to survey people is a great option on how to get this in there. Okay, so how do I set that up? I'm going to go to the New button in Google Drive. I'm going to go to More, and I'm going to go to Google My Maps. And that's going to give us a brand new fresh map to start working on. Now, instead of adding points myself, I'm just going to click this Import button and go to my Google Drive and then navigate to my spreadsheet. And if you're not exactly sure where it is in your drive, you can go to Recent, and it probably will show up near the top of your list. And this is the one I'm looking for. So I'm going to click Select, and it's going to take a second to read in the information, and then I have to answer some questions here. So choose the columns to position your place marks. What it wants to know is, how do I put pins on the map? And we want to use this question, where do you live? So that's what's going to determine where the pins show up. Continue. And then what do we want to use for the title of the place marks? And in this case, we're going to use who did you vote for? Let's click Finish, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, so all of these pins just showed up. Let me zoom in and look at our area here. So we've got some down in Oregon and some up in our neck of the woods here. And so here they all are. And they're all the same color right now, so let's go over here and look at this. Right now it says Uniform Style. And so I can choose to say individual styles and pick different colors for each one, or we can go down here and say Style by Data column. And that means we want to style this by who did you vote for. So I'm going to click that. And notice now there's two colors. One is a brownish color, and that represents a vote for Haley Brinton, and then a bluish color, which represents a vote for Donovan Gump. So we can change those colors. So we can take this one and make it a more obvious blue, and we can take this one and make it a red color. And now we can just see at a glance where the votes were located. So that's kind of an interesting idea. You can imagine lots of questions you could ask the community where their answers might be dependent on kind of where they live, and you could see that on a map like this. So you could have students come up with a survey, and they could send that out to the community, and then as long as they're asking where they live, they could plot the results on a map like this pretty easily. Okay, so you can, there's some other options up here. We can choose to add labels, and the label doesn't have to be the same as what the color represents. So right now our colors show who they voted for. We could also say, how old are you? And now you see next to each vote the age of that person who voted. You can also use which do you prefer, which was the ice cream or cake question. Okay. So sometimes you'll do this sort of thing and you might notice trends in the data, and that's why looking at stuff visually is really important. So what if I changed this to a question instead of who did you vote for, but we looked at which dessert they preferred? And so we have, in this case, yellow representing ice cream and blue representing cake. And so what I'm noticing here is that if you look at all the cake answers, they're all in high population centers. Obviously, there's not very many farms in the city, so they all go out and have cake. But out here where there's farms like Ellensburg and Tumwater and Stanwood, people like ice cream because there's lots of ice cream available, okay? So clearly you can find out things from the data by plotting them on a map.